How we doing today, neighbors? Ian with eTrailer here, and today we're going to be putting the CURT Class 3 2-inch by 2-inch hitch on our 2024 Cadillac XT6. Let's go over a few features of that hitch and then we'll take care of the install. One benefit of throwing your hitch onto the XT6 here is Cadillac was nice enough to give us a removable panel that's just taken out with a couple T15 screws, so that way we can keep that nice OEM look on the back of the vehicle when the hitch isn't in use, and we don't have to do any trimming that's going to be permanent to our fascia. The XT6 is a beautiful SUV and has plenty of room for you and your passengers inside. And additional to a roof rack, you're kind of limited on the space in the back of the vehicle. With those rear seats up, you're only getting about 1.5 feet deep into the vehicle for that luggage. So to be able to open up the option for either those bike carriers or cargo carriers on the back, this CURT is going to be a great fit for the XT6. Now when it comes to weight capacities for this hitch, we're looking at 4,500 pounds on the towable capacity, and then our downward pressure, which is going to be that tongue weight pressure, we're looking at 675 pounds. So again, double check your owner's manual of your XT6, see if the ratings are lower, and if they are, make sure you stick with that lower number for safety. One thing to keep in mind with this hitch is going to be how recessed this is into the vehicle. So if you've got a shorter shanked accessory, or maybe even with the trailers going into this, you may need an extension for your hitch to be able to reach out far enough to clear the back of the vehicle. So keeping all that in mind, we'll get some measurements here to kind of give an idea of how your accessories are going to fit. And we're starting from the center of our hitch pin hole here out to the edge of the bumper, looking at 7 inches. So that's a pretty good recession. Again, like we talked about, you may want that extension if you've got a folding bike rack or cargo carrier there. And from the ground to the inside top edge of our receiver tube, we are looking at 19 inches. So that'll give you a good idea of the ground clearance of your accessory or towable. Now this is going to feature a hole for a 5/8 inch pinhole, and it is not included with the kit, so make sure you take a look at the locking options for those. We have plenty on the website to pick from. And as far as these safety chain loops, I don't absolutely love them, but I don't hate them at the same time. They are recessed pretty far back there, and here on the passenger side, there is a panel that's pretty close to that loop, so definitely something worth noting. And even with the hitch in place, we can still utilize the hands-free option here on our XT6 to get into the back of the vehicle. Now before we get into the installation on this, I've got a few tech notes that I wanted to talk about on things we found while installing the hitch. The entire fascia does need to come off for this, and it's going to be replacing that factory bumper beam. I'm going to show you the entire process of removing that, getting that bumper beam off, and then mounting up the hitch in its place. But there were a few things that we found along the way that are worth noting. On our XT6 here, we do have mud flaps down on each side that were held on by a rivet on the very bottom. It's not mentioned anywhere in the instructions as far as how to deal with that situation. So I'm going to show you how to drill that rivet out and then go ahead, pull that mud flap off, and then you will have to either rivet that back into place or have hardware to be able to remount that bottom part of the mud flap on each side. So definitely worth noting. Now if you happen to watch this video and think to yourself, I don't want to try to tackle putting this hitch on or getting that fascia off, please do check out our dealer locator on the website. We'd be happy to help find a trained professional in your area that can help get this installed for you. But for all those DIYers, I'd be happy to walk you through, and let's go ahead and take care of that now. And we've got the car in the air for video purposes, but I wanted to show the painter's tape that we put on the edge of the fascia here, going all the way back to the tail light and then above the fascia. Since we are going to be pulling that off, we do want to protect as much as we can of that nice new paint. So we're going to begin under the back of the vehicle here, where there is a set on each side of these 7mm bolts that we'll need to remove, and anything we do from here on out going forward on one side we will replicate on the other. Now we're ready to remove this center panel, and there's two T15 Torx bits that we'll pull out at the very front edge of that. With that hardware removed, we can just slightly pull down on that panel and set that aside. Now, if your vehicle has mud flaps, we are going to have to get these removed because we're going to be pulling back the trim behind it to access some more hardware for that fascia to come off. And on the inside, we'll have a T15 here at the top and one here at the middle we'll need to remove. On the bottom of the mud flap, there is going to be a single rivet that we will need to drill through. Unfortunately, CURT does not include a replacement in the kit, so keep that in mind when you're going to put your hitch up. If you are going to be returning these mud flaps back, you can either run a small bolt through that, or if you've got another rivet to be able to throw in there, I would highly suggest that. All right, now we can work this, pop it the rest of the way out for our rivet. Just pushing that out of the bottom of the mud flap. And then there is an adhesive strip that runs on the inside up against this. So when we go to take this loose, we'll start to pry away. Now you can apply pressure to that plastic strip that we're going to be taking off, and the mud flap, that adhesive strip, should start to work its way loose. And we can set that mud flap aside. And back behind our fender liner here, we're going to pull loose these small tabs, just pushing down on the retaining tab for that and forcing it up out of the clip. We'll need to take both of these out. Now, if you don't have the mud flaps, you'll just be taking this T15 at the very bottom of that small plastic trim panel loose. And once we've got that out, we'll work back that fender well liner out of the way. Now we can grab that lower plastic trim, pushing away from the body of the vehicle here at the top, so that way it disconnects where we pulled those clips out of, and that's going to let us grab this outer trim panel here. And we want to be extremely careful when removing this inner trim panel next to our fender liner, and the easiest way I've found to be able to take this apart without breaking anything is on the inside. They're just held together with little plastic push pins, and once I get it apart I'll be able to show them better. But you can take a flathead or push pin removal tool, get in between that and pry that push pin out of the hole, or you can reach from the back side and try to squeeze them. It can be kind of difficult to get both edges of that clip, so just be very careful when we're taking these apart. With that back even further, we continue to work our way up. Our next one is going to be right where this plastic panel is, so we'll try to worm up in between that, or maybe even push on the clip to get it to come loose. And once we've got this pulled back far enough, we're going to expose another 7mm screw that we'll need to take out here. So we're just going to pay good attention to this trim panel, making sure we don't crease it, and work that 7mm out of the way. And just like we did for the fender liner, if we need to, we can continue to work those push pins out of that trim panel to get more access to that bolt. Now on the inside of the tail light, where the tailgate is, we're going to have an additional panel we need to take loose. So we'll start with the T15 at the bottom of that. And once we've got that loose, we can go in between the seal, and you'll see it's kind of flexible on that back side. So we'll get our hand back behind it, just using a couple fingers to push up as the clips are pushing down into that. So you'll lift and pull, and then that will come loose. You are going to want an extra pair of hands to be able to take that fascia off. I got Brad over here helping me out today. And when we're taking this off, we want to keep in mind that there are plugs and sensors that are all running back through this, and we're going to just get it pulled away. So if you reach under where we took that 7mm out, you'll start at the corner here, just slowly pulling away, and it should come apart pretty easily. And we'll work our way all the way down to the tail light here. Once we get one side free, it should be a little easier just to continue to pull that loose. We have to pull from the bottom. And once that is loose, we'll just keep an eye out for where that plug is. Looks like it's going to be on the driver's side here. So you'll grab that small red retention clip, pull that back, and then push down where that retention clip was held. Sometimes you may have to use a small flathead to get on the inside of that. I've got one right here. And again, with this bottom plug, you'll push up the red retention lever and then down on that center where it was locked into, possibly using that pry procedure that we did for the first plug. And it is held on by a small stud, and you can use a pry tool or a flathead just to work that off of there. Then we can safely set that fascia aside using the box that the hitch came in as a good place to rest that. With the fascia off, we can now get to the bumper beam that we're going to be removing. To do so, there are a set of 4 15mm bolts to include what's going to be the exhaust hanger, so we'll make sure when we get those off that we just kind of swing that hanger out of the way. But there is going to be another point where the harness for our sensors and all that was running to the fascia is attached. So again, just take a flathead or pry tool or something like that, and we can work that plastic retainer off of there. And we'll work that out of the side, and then take that 15mm deep well with extension and go ahead and get these top bolts off. We are going to leave one up in the corner loose while we do the other side, so just leave one of those top ones in place when you go to take that other side off. Take that last bolt out of that bracket, working the bracket up and over the retaining tab here that goes through that hole, and we'll just let that hang here. Now as we take these last couple ones loose, we'll just make sure we support that bumper beam. So I've got our last nut at the top here, and last one on that other side. And we can pull that bumper beam straight out away from the vehicle, and then this can go back to the neighbor if they wanted to be able to ever remove the hitch. Otherwise, we are going to be replacing it with the hitch. Now we'll take the hitch, lifting that into place over the studs that we pulled the bumper beam off of. Now there are some wires right next to where that bumper beam was living. be a little pocket for that stud that holds that in place. And we'll go ahead and work that in. Just make sure, again, you're paying attention to those exhaust hangers as well, not pinching those in between. We'll just loosely take a couple of the nuts on each side and get those into place. We're just going to leave them loose, but with enough threading to hold it there, because we do need to get the bolts on the bottom side lined up. Now we'll apply some upward pressure on the hitch and get that exhaust hanger into place, lining up our bolt holes and the exhaust hanger. And we can come back through with that 15mm socket that we used to take everything loose and just get them all snugged down. And as you're snugging it down, you may want to do almost an X pattern going back and forth between all of them. It'll just help pull that nice and flush up against the body. Now we're going to come back with a torque wrench and torque all of our hardware to the specifications shown in that instruction manual. If you don't own a torque wrench, you can pick one up along with your order for your hitch from us, or head down to that local parts store and they should be able to rent one out for you. Now with that all torqued into place, we are ready to go ahead and put that fascia back up in the reverse order that we took it off. So we'll just again make sure we get our 2 plugs here on the driver's side and all that hardware back in. We're also going to have to deal with that mud flap situation on this particular vehicle. So again, you may need that rivet, or you can use maybe a long screw and bolt combination to be able to hold that bottom part together. And that's going to do for our look at of this CURT 2" by 2" Class 3 hitch on our 2024 Cadillac XT6. My name's Ian with eTrailer, and I appreciate you watching.